Herzlich willkommen. A warm welcome to all of you. Very good to see you all here.
Wunderbar. I'm very happy to see you all. A warm welcome to everybody who also joined through the networks of Mehr Demokratie and Pioneers of Change, and through the Pocket Project. Here we really are, and maybe that's an expression of feminine power, that as three women, we represent three organizations that collaborate. While I'm briefly attuning to the call and starting the call, you're invited to use the chat and to let us know how you're landing here today, what's moving inside you. And we invited you for this evening, Feminine Power, Voices of Change, because it feels as though we're at a time in the world where male voices are very audible, especially when it comes to decision making, also when it's about war and peace. And it seems to us to be more important than ever to explore how we can uh, we can balance authentic feminine power and authentic male power, both out in the world as well as inside of each and every one of us. What does feminine power actually mean? How does that express in the world? And what does it mean to express authentic male power when it appears in its full beauty? So we're here to start this exploration, to explore together, not necessarily to find clear answers. We might have some answers emerging, but our main purpose is to be together and explore together. And before we begin, we would like to spend a few minutes in silence together. And Ben is here today as our tech host. And already now I want to welcome Hemma, who's here from Pioneers of Change, Claudine from Mehr Demokratie, and Melanie, who's translating for us. Thank you, Melanie. And to just take a moment, maybe we can move to gallery view for this, to enable us to arrive together. Oh, that's beautiful. Here you all are. And to take a moment of time to view each other. It's beautiful to have you all here. And I notice instantly that I'm looking for men. David, thank you for being here. Wale, I saw you. Thank you for being here. Beautiful to see you. And I'm sure there's a few more men. Johan, a warm welcome to you. Stefan, great. It is an evening that's both for men as for women, and I'm very happy about the beautiful, wonderful feminine power that's present here, and also the beautiful male power present here as well, and woven softly into the space. So let's take some time to, if it feels right, to close our eyes. If it doesn't, to soften our gaze and find a few moments of inner stillness. When we talk about the polarities of male, female, yin, yang, then part of looking at that is also the polarity between movement, action, and stillness. This is also an area where we're out of balance. And therefore, it's good to begin with a moment of stillness and to sense and listen within. How am I landing here? How am I? To listen to my breath for a few moments. And there too, with the inflow and the outflow of the breath, to notice the presence of yin and yang. And these poles, these polarities, where we've fully filled up with breath, to maybe stay there for a short while before we exhale again, and to also take a moment of stillness there. Those two sides of life that um, that have a flow between them and a natural balance. And maybe we can give a little more space to both to inhaling as well as to exhaling, and to the spaces in between. And maybe there is already the beginning of that question. How about balance inside of me between inhaling and exhaling, between doing and giving space, giving direction, listening, to lead and to step back and give space to others. How is that balance inside of me? How um, how am I feeling that balance of feminine and masculine inside of myself? And if we take some brief time to listen to our heart, to our emotions, how much space am I given to my heart and to my emotions in my daily life? And when we sense into our mind, how often does the mind dominate? Might it take this opportunity to rest a little? And maybe each and every one of us can listen inside and listen to, why am I here today and what called me? What's the longing behind it? And this higher intention and deeper longing may find space here within us and in our witnessing. And then I'm inviting us to slowly and at our own pace open our eyes again and to sense, perceive that group space that we're creating together. And to take a moment of time to welcome each other from our hearts. Maybe you see one or two specific women that you would send a welcome to, one or two men that you're sending a welcome to. It's beautiful to have you here. This is how we can jointly warm our joint space. Thank you. And I also would like to extend an extra welcome to our English speaking participants today. Usually, we will be translating from English to German, and it's quite rare that we're translating from German to English. And I find it's great that you're here today. So, what we're planning for this evening is a conversation, and I'm very grateful that Hemma is going to be our host tonight. And I'm really happy about her presence here. Hemma has been leading workshops for women to step into their leadership and really deeply explores these topics. And she's been part of the management team of Pioneers of Change since 2017. And she's initially been leading in the background, but since 2021, she's been the face to the outside world together with Martin Kirchner as co-lead of the Pioneers of Change online summit and initiator of the weekly newsletters. And here too, there's the balance of feminine and masculine. She's been leading Women Remember since 2021, the online training for women in leadership. And she supports social organizations and change processes as a consultant. And I'm very happy about our friendship, Hemma, and about your wisdom in that area. And I'm really happy that you are taking over the hosting, and over to you. Hemma says, and thanks you too, dear Kosha, for that which uh, flowers between us as women and as organizers. And this call expresses what has grown. Um, I speak German too, Austrian German, and I'm looking forward to being both a participant and a host in this call. So invited by the Pocket Project and co-host with you, Kosha, for this evening. And together with the two of us, we'll have Claudine sitting with us, Claudine Nierth. With you, Claudine, there's also a lot that that connects us. You are a political activist and artist and have been actively working for direct democracy. You're the spokesperson of Mehr Demokratie, which is the association More Democracy. You initiated several referendums and the first two nationwide citizen councils and the Citizen Council on Nutrition for the German Bundestag. And in 2018, you were awarded the Federal Cross of Merit by Federal President Frank-Walter Steinmeier. And you wrote two books, Die Demokratie braucht uns and Die zerrissene Gesellschaft, Democracy Needs Us, and Torn Society. We already had a beautiful call together in the past, and I'm very happy that we can deepen this. And I'm very happy you're here, Claudine. Claudine says, I'm also very happy to be here. Hemma says, so you are joining us from Berlin, the hotspot of German politics. And there's a special thanks and gratitude to you that through you we are connected to what's happening politically in Germany. And Kosha, I'm also bringing you to the center. Most people here probably know you. You're the executive director of the Pocket Project, and with the Pocket Project, you work to build a trauma-informed culture of mutual compassion. You work in areas of systems regenerations, also for traumatized systems. This is also related to your own history. You grew up in in South Africa during apartheid. So to you, the issue of intercultural collaboration is very important to you. And being a trauma-informed leader is another area that's very important for you. You organized the World Women's Summit, which is about to start in the beginning of March. And you have interviewed a lot of women, also people of other genders, for this. You have authored several books and received the One World Award for developing the global Eco Village network, which is a huge network of eco villages all over the world that has become a worldwide movement. This is where you have been bringing your feminine leadership into the world. Kosha says, thank you, Hemma. Emma says, I would like to begin. When we connected before the call, you, Claudine, spoke that the political forces and especially men are positioning themselves after the federal elections, and you are part of those witnessing that, what's currently happening. And if I also think of the US elections, then there's one thing that's so obvious to me, and also touched my heart. Mark Zuckerberg said after the election of Donald Trump that Meta has to become more masculine. And what that meant is that inclusion and diversity measures are being reduced and turned off. So I thought, wow, is that masculine? Is that what it means to be masculine? And I would like to start with you personally, what it means to you to be in your feminine power. What, if you think of yourself, how does feminine power show when you're in your leadership power? How does it show and express? And before you answer, I would also like to ask all our participants, or invite our participants to ask yourself that question and to answer that question, and to also write that in the chat. What is feminine leadership power for you, and how does it express through you? What could this feminine power be, and how does it show up in your life? without us having fixed or ready answers, because we probably don't yet have a ready and done answer for that. So the first answers are coming through the chat. Thank you. In the chat. And I want to start with you, Claudine. We haven't yet heard much of your voice. How does feminine power show in how you are in the world? Claudine says that's an interesting question, because it's just been in recent years that I noticed how much I was trying to become masculine, because I noticed, oh, when I'm being masculine, I'm more accepted, more loved, and it took me a long time to realize that. And then I started exploring those two polarities, and I had a teacher who gave us a primal image of the masculine and the feminine, the straight line and the circular lines. So the straight one is more like the sword, whereas the rounded one is what embraces. So you will find both all over the world, and sometimes one to the exclusion of the other. Sometimes they're in balance. And while you've also asked me about the political context, we're coming from a very male-dominated political tradition. Initially, it was about wars, about leadership, about strategy and cunning. And I believe still today, these are qualities that are dominant in politics. And still today in Berlin, after the election, you'll find meetings with not a single woman in them. And that also comes with the idea of being a soul leader. So we're living in the 21st century, and we're dependent on what one person thinks in the United States, of what one person is doing in terms of war in the world. And I believe there's a calling from the future to overcome this, to think in more in more round ways, in more collaborative ways, also in terms of leadership. That it's not I am the sole leader, but we collaborate and we co-create leadership. And I noticed when I'm being very feminine, I'm also trying to think both and, whereas when I feel very masculine, I'm trying to to find or create a direction in chaos, or to move something forward. And I believe all of us who are here in the space today, we both have this straight and this round quality, this male and feminine principles. And because we have both, we can mix and match them, play with them, and give them more or less weight. And all of us can watch how these polarities are being are showing in me and Hemma and Kosha. So am I currently more in the feminine or more in the masculine? And right now I'm between both. And I used to think, and that used to stress me out, that when I was in together with males, that I needed to be a male too. But then I heard a man say I was supportive to him the more feminine I was, the more I entered feminine qualities, the more he can relax as a man and take his place. And that's when it clicked for me, because that perspective hadn't existed for me previously. So I started searching in meetings and in leadership situations to search what does it mean to embody feminine qualities. And having explored this, I also noticed that the feminine power is often a still power. You notice when a strong feminine power is present in a room, in a space, and how it engages and is involved. And I would say that when I'm powerful in my feminine power, I try to connect to the feminine force. And when I'm feeling weak inside, I'm looking for feminine surroundings to connect to that. But I also know the opposite of connecting to male qualities. And I would say that one feminine quality that I know is to build bridges, to close gaps, and to think in a round way. For me, it happens then when I'm integrating diversity. So in the electoral campaign in Germany, the parties were saying, we are the best party. All of them were saying that. And by doing that, we're excluding all the others, but the others are a part of me. And what I'm looking for in politics is where we're overcoming this and all the others integrate. And I would say that's one of my feminine qualities that I could name. And I wouldn't say that's a scientifically proven definition. So please, everybody, feel your own truth in that. Hemma says, and yes, I was specifically asking, how are you living that so that we can go and search and explore, because we have a strong imprint of the patriarchal way of thinking. What is feminine? What is masculine? So that we really have to start searching for what it actually could be. Kosha, what's it like for you? How do you perceive that? Kosha says, Yes, that's really beautiful to build on that because you already said so much, Claudine, and I'm very much with you. And there's this feeling that when I'm in leadership positions, this idea of having to use male qualities and to feel that the world is expecting that. So being a leader, having clear plans, strategies, time schedules. And I noticed for myself that I have a very intuitive way of leading. It feels like I'm walking into a garden. The world is a garden. There's abundance. There's so much aliveness, so many possibilities. And then it's sensing and feeling of what is the next thing that wants to be addressed in this field, that's asking for a response. And that's how I orient. That's how the World Women's Summit emerged. It was in the time when the Ukraine war started and the war in Gaza, and it seemed like I was only seeing men in the news. So I wanted to create a space for women, and I believe that's an important contribution. It's not something I could have come up in a rational way, but it's something that I felt intuitively that it was important at the given time, and it was something that was important to me at the moment. And then if it finds enough resonance and life supports it, then something emerges and comes into the world. So I more and more see organizing as a garden. And that's also what I would ask to all of which you, Claudine, already brought. In many indigenous perspectives, the world, the earth is being seen as the mother and the sky as the father. and it's about embedding ourselves into creation, understanding that we're part of everything, that we're not the culmination of creation, but that we really find our space in the circle of life, and that our original task as humans is that we support all of life, the entire flow of life. And I would say that both for male expression and feminine expression, it's valid. But there's different ways of supporting life, but it really needs those things in common to support life. And what I learned from indigenous elders is two things. So one is the image that humanity cannot fly if the wings are not in balance, and that's what it's needing at the moment for our consciousness to be able to rise, to balance those powers. And the other thing is that, as you already said, Claudine, this this having a clear idea and giving a direction is something that often feels like a male quality, but that it has to be birthed into the world through a feminine quality in order for a quality to to be constructive, not destructive in the world. Then it has to mature with a feminine force. It's like the man giving the seed or the semen, and the women giving the uterine space. And that's very related to Eros, but also to speed and stillness, to movement and space. And I enjoy both a lot. That maybe that's enough for now. I could say more, but I'll leave it here. And Hemma says, it's great that you're saying that we can enjoy both, because both powers are so essential in order to birth something into life. And not to just bring it into the world, but as in a garden, to cultivate it and look after it and to accompany the space. You said that, so to say, there's feminine and masculine qualities in order to support life. I would like to ask, how did you mean that and what does it mean? And then afterwards, I would ask you, Claudine, about intuition. What's it like for you? But first, my question to you, Kasha, about these ways of supporting life. Kosha says, life is diversity, incredible diversity. And the thought that we listen to ourselves more than to what happens around us in the nature. So there's the power of nature, but also the entire world, to listen closely, to watch closely, and watch, how can I support the flow? How can I support the healthy flow of life? And I worked for a long time in the Eco Village network and in regenerative work, and the the nucleus of that is really to look what's out there all around me and what can I do to create more diversity. Where where are the polarities meeting each other? And we know in nature that in the area where different things meet is where diversity is biggest. So rather than fragmenting and separating, we bring that together. We bring the differences together. And I can also see that in human areas, that it's very fertile to bring different people together. Many indigenous people, and I'm thinking of Lila June, who is a young Native American who has deeply explored how the indigenous peoples of North America um, were relating to the continent, to Turtle Island, how they developed huge forests just by looking after the trees a little bit, and that invited a lot more diversity of animals, and they looked after the grasslands, and that way there were more animals. And also they looked after the area of the coast where they cultivated plants inside the water, so the smaller fish would grow in amount, and that would feed the bigger fish. So it's a way of looking at the way where I'm not just looking at what can I take, how can I grab resources, but how can I support what's there so more diversity and more abundance is created for everybody. Hemma says thank you. And Claudine, so this was about supporting the diversity of life as a supportive force. And Kosha says she leads a lot using intuition. What's it like for you? How do you perceive that? Is that something relevant to you? Claudine said, I'm still with Kosha's words, especially with the word of cultivating and looking after and caring for. This is a typical feminine quality, which also a lot of men are really good at. And then also the quality of networking. I'm not that good at networking, and I also really admire people who are good at that. And I would say that's a very feminine quality. And I'd say that my intuition, I more and more rely on it, I'd say. Um, Back in the day, I would prepare things. I would learn my speeches almost by heart. Um, I would rely on PowerPoint, but no longer so. So even in this evening, I haven't. I'm co-creating this with you, and I have the courage to engage with our common field and to trust that what wants to emerge will emerge. And speaking about the political field, I am leaving typical patterns of power behind. Um, there was a referendum in the area of Schleswig-Holstein where people were saying, don't even talk to the politicians because we're not going to be able to come to an agreement. But I still spoke to the leaders and offered to at least sit down together, and would and I was accepting that the person I was speaking to had a different goal than the one I have. And I believe this is a very important feminine quality, that I accept what the other person wants, that I don't want to manipulate them, that I respect them. In that case, the other person was a strong male leader, and I would say that was a very feminine quality when I said, let's have a look and see if there is another possibility rather than going into a confrontation in public, which would have ended in a referendum where one side would have won and the other one would have lost in public. And interestingly, this was resolved, and an important factor in this was trust. For me, honesty was very important, and also that I cared that the person I was speaking to would also get what they wanted, even though it was in contrast to what I wanted. And in those conversations, all that existed was intuition, because we created a solution that we had no idea existed when we started speaking. And that was a huge political insight. That was not something we prepared in advance and we strategized. It was something where we co-created and explored together what we could create. So there was a political side and a side from the population that co-created this, and that made it very real for me. That when the fronts are very rigid and and people say there's nothing you can do, and I say no, there is something you can do. You can at least knock on their door and offer them a conversation and tell the other person that they can win too. And that's what happened in Schleswig-Holstein, where the parliament agreed on our proposal. And so today journalists are asking us, how did you do that, and how did you negotiate? And usually it's like a give and take, but we said no, we wanted to fortify democracy by overcoming confrontation, because it was fully clear to us that nothing strengthens democracy more at the moment than accepting that you have different positions, but you can create something common, and that there's an offer for a solution. This is a very concrete example of how I use presence and intuition in a very difficult, and in this case also a political situation. Emma says, yes, that shows so clearly. So on the one side, you're talking about emergence. So we don't know what will emerge, and we co-create. And it's a lot to do with you trusting the process, where you say, we don't know what the result will be, but we're trying. Claudine says, yes, exactly. The strategizing was the non-strategizing. So you have political negotiations, and you want to score 5 points, and so you enter and you say you want 10, and then you'll end up with 5.5. But to leave all that behind, and to also rely on the other person's, the other side's creativity, and to say, if we both want a solution that's good for both of us, then let's engage. And by the way, it's not a surprise that it happened in Schleswig-Holstein in northern Germany. It's near Denmark and Sweden, and there they have this integrative political style to also have lunch with your fiercest opponent, and to speak about the political situation in the world. And 3 of the leading politicians that we have in Berlin today are from Schleswig-Holstein, and they desire to bring this political style to Berlin. And all 3 of them failed, a lot to do with different politicians from different parties. But that's fascinating to me, because I'm convinced that this integrative quality can bring a solution. It doesn't have to always be one person being stronger than the other. And it works. And that's why I'm not giving up and keep going for that, even though it's becoming difficult. If you look at world politics, you think, oh goodness, strong male leaders are conquering the world. And something inside of me is actually quite calm about it, saying, okay, it's going to take a little longer, but I'm still here. My presence is not diminished, and my power is not diminished. But to not be intimidated by that is a nice challenge. Kosha, I've seen you nodding your head, is what Hemma says. Would you like to tell us how you're resonating? Because I remember when we did our pre-call, and you said that considering the urgency, or because of the urgency of the situation, I do not want to rush. And Kosha says, yeah, well, if I'm speaking from a very personal perspective, and maybe several women are feeling this here, and that's where I really admire you, Claudine. I find that great. To me, I'm a networker. I work in an NGO and have been doing this for many years, and I bring people together to have visions grow like a garden. And then when on the highest level, I see men who think they know how the world works, and I see them doing things that destroy the world, so to speak. It's always been scaring me. Yes. And that's something I've been looking at for a long time, especially when the organization that I'm working with is successful. And then a man approaches me and says, oh, okay, this is all nice and well, but I know how we can do this better. And there's quite a few who have approached me that way. And I've been watching for many years what happens inside of me then, because there's like a protesting inside of me, a confrontation where I become tighter than I want to, also in terms of building bridges. And been um, I've I've been really exploring this, and as many of you will have noticed or know, we're doing a lot of trauma integration work here in the Pocket Project, but also transgenerational trauma integration. And in that sense, it's been fascinating to me to look at my feminine and masculine ancestry and to sense into what's happening there, and to look at the dynamics that are happening in the world, how they are already inside of my ancestry, with my relationship to my father and my grandfather. As you mentioned, I grew up in South Africa, and in the last couple of months and weeks, it's been many months, years, that I've been in touch with the feminine ancestry, and there's patterns of power and patterns of trauma that have been passed down the generations, where women have been very powerful, traveling continents. Um, Germans coming, Poles coming to South Africa, and I also have German ancestry, but I had much less access to the male ancestry. And now, for the first time in my life, I have been working with my German grandfather. As I said, my mother is from Germany. He passed away 2 months before I was born. I haven't spent much time in Germany. There's not that much of a relation for me to Germany. And I looked at his life, where he was a soldier for Hitler for 6 years, and then he spent 1 year as a prisoner of war. And I deeply studied this, and when I looked at the feminine line, I saw all the wounding that happened through the war, the wounding of the women and the children, the huge pressure, and that there was no support. And now I looked at it from the other side, and saw the existential fear he was exposed to over so many years, what kind of pain it was for him to leave your ethics behind as a soldier. and the feeling of absolute failure that he returned with after the war. And that 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 has reverberated in my whole being. We've been accompanying the Ukrainian community for the last 3 years, and I have a lot of contact and relation with young Ukrainian men who have to go to the front, and to see what a deep wounding of the heart that is, and how deep that wound runs. And that supports me in understanding much more deeply how wounded we are, in how we are being in the world, both as men and women, and at the same time looking at what it could be to be feminine and masculine in the healthiest way, because that what we are seeing is not what masculinity and femininity could be. It's how it expresses in patriarchy, but not what it could be. And what I notice is that inside of me, this creates a different way of engaging with men and seeing, wow, you've been through so much. And when I hear this through the words that are being spoken to me, I can build a bridge. By fully landing in myself, I can fully be there and really hold space. And maybe that's another contribution to this field. Hema says, thank you for sharing that. And my own father appeared, who was drawn to the war when he was 16 years old. And I'm noticing we could be sharing a lot of these stories with each other. And I find that this new quality, or what is being perceived as a new quality, that it's not the shaming and blaming and the perpetrator and the victim, but that together we created a system that is harming all of us. Women are suffering in a deeper way. So still today, it's that women own 20% of land in the world and 30% of the wealth in the world. But not to forget that men too suffer in this system. I know that from the men return course that we have in the Pioneers of Change. And they say, I no longer want to play that game. It's not my game. And that touched me so deeply, that we are exploring the path behind the strategies, because what you expressed earlier is a strategy as a man, by telling people how things are supposed to be. Kosha says, yes, I agree, and to claim that you know how the world works, and it's part of what's happening in these times. We really don't know. How we believe we can solve problems often contributes to the difficulties that we're seeing on multiple levels. And when there's more space to really listen and let solutions emerge from a bigger space, and allow more perspectives and um, more people's perspectives, there are good reasons why different perspectives arise, and often it's because of deep historical wounds. And if we ignore those, then polarization is created. And I would say that that's maybe the essence of this personal story. It's that deepest search for the roots that is needed to be able to move more. When we stay at the surface level of men and women, not much is going to move. But if we sense and search deeper, then a lot can move. Hemma says, thank you, Kosha. I also had a quick glance at the clock, and time is flying. We could spend a lot more time talking, but I would also like to invite voices from the field, and uh, then to also bring this conversation between the three of us to an end. I would like to ask, what do you think we need to get out of this fragmentation and polarization? We just need to open our social media account and we will see how polarization is happening. What can we contribute to get out of this polarization and fragmentation? And is there a contribution, especially by women? Claudine says, well, what comes to mind first is the quality of the center is what is important. So I already notice in our in our round of in our circle of three women, I have a longing for a male quality. So it's a feminine evening, but I feel a longing to hear masculine voice and masculine power. And I often notice in myself, in my feminine leadership, that when that a man will take the lead and we will have discussed evenings and evenings, and finally he says, this is what we're going to do, and it relaxes me, and I can take that with humor, and I really like that. So now the question is, I believe you can only overcome polarity if you recognize it and know it. I believe a difficulty in our times is that we actually don't know what masculinity and femininity means. But when you know what it means, you're able to create the center. You will feel intuitively something is missing. And it has been noticed that the more women participate, democratical processes change, but there is a limitation to it. So if you have 100 women or just women, it doesn't get better, or it comes to a limit because you need the complementary opposite. And to me, whether I look into politics or into romantic partnerships or into workforces, the loss of the center is something I'm noticing. The loss of the center is to be able to balance that within myself, but also in society, to be the center. Yeah. Hemma says, and the interesting thing when you say that is to be in the center while respecting and recognizing the differences. We can only create the center when we know the polarities. And Claudine says, and to be able to feel them inside yourself. And that creates the center, and that creates a lot of power and is liberating. In a romantic partnership too, you are in a partnership crisis, and once the couple accepts each other in the polarity and senses the other inside themselves, then the situation gets relaxed and humor comes back, and then it's also okay if at some point there's more of the one polarity and or the other. Hemma says, "Oh, I'm seeing your beloved before my inner eye, and I can really imagine." And Hemma says, "Kosha, would you like to respond to that as well?" Kosha says, yes, I think it's really beautiful to see the difference between polarity and polarizing. Polarity is like the the origin of life. When there's no polarity and they don't come together, then nothing new emerges. So polarity is everywhere in how the sea moves, in the inhale and exhale, and the center. That's very interesting. Also, with what we did with our breathing in the beginning. Um, a lot of insight comes when you look for the center. And when we're rushing too much into one direction, then we no longer find the center. It reminds me of yin and yang, where the center emerges in the movement. So the yin yang symbol, there is not one point that is the center. Well, you probably could. You probably could paint a center, but the center is emerging from the movement. And um, to perceive that the center emerges from the polarity, and that polarity is something amazing. It's one of the most amazing things in life. It's huge fun and a lot of joy. And that from there, the richest, most abundant future can emerge. And polarization talks of separation, division, where the center is lost, which is what you were saying, Claudine. And that talks about intense traumatization, about deep wounds that haven't been healed, so the center can no longer be held. And as a last thing, is that actually we could be somewhere else than where we are in Germany too. And that's and that's something we're not managing to manifest, and we can be othering and we can be talking badly about the other sides, but we can also look at, how am I part of this? How am I carrying all these parts inside of me? And to go deeper, to really feel the polarity, the healthy polarity. Hemma says, the sentence that's coming to me is that maybe we're experiencing so much polarization because we lost polarity, that we have unlearned how to be in that dance. Kosha says, yes, and I believe that we have these fields of tension that that like that are sparking into war, but they could be erotic and creative, and it's important that we unfold this. Hannah says, well, thank you for this beautiful conversation. We have a couple of questions. I've also seen a few comments. And I would like to invite, now that after we spoke, to hear a few voices, maybe 3 or 4, to give a resonance of where are you after having heard this. Maybe a question emerged that you would like to give into the space. And then at the very end, we'll go into a final brief conversation with Claudine and Kosha. So if you want to ask your question or give us your resonance, then please bring up your, hold up your hand or lift your hand. Kosha said, just while we wait, I would like to say a few words to Marina. I find it an important point. We did mention that also in nature there's many beings that are born with one sex and then change the sex, and there are intersexual beings, and this whole spectrum is part of the abundance and the diversity, and and that really makes it all so beautiful and juicy, and we embrace that. Thank you, Marina. Hema says, and I also, when you mentioned that image of political meetings with only men, it's not just the women who are missing, but also other gender identities. So let's not fall into this binary model, but let's bring in more diversity. Gude, may I ask you? Good says, okay, so I'm uh, um, in this circle of four here. I would like to say thanks from my heart. It really touched me because it's the contrary of what's been coming my way for the last couple of weeks. I am actively involved politically here in Bremen against the right-wing movement. But I would also like to ask, what about polarity in terms of money and power? And I also feel the powerlessness in the face of all this money and distribution of wealth. I can feel how that makes me feel very small. And I'm a trauma therapist, and I work with transgenerational trauma, and that helps me a lot. And Trump is obviously highly traumatized, and Elon Musk also has Asperger on top, but it doesn't help me because they have so much power in terms of the media and politics. And I think I need something that helps me with feeling so helpless. And thank you so much. Hema says, thank you, Gude. And I would like to add Liane's question, who is also asking about structural inequality. And she feels so much anger, and she notices that many people are directing that anger towards their partners or the system. And how can we take this power back to us and give it a direction so it can change something? Would it be okay to ask those to merge those two questions? Claudine says, well, feeling helpless is probably part of being alive. I have been working for decades in the political field and have not entered positions of power. So I've had to face helplessness a lot. And when you look at the world these days, you can just fall back in helplessness. But to consciously be with that in the moment is also a capacity. And that way I'm also creating a center which enables me to look at something that I don't actually want to be seen. And this is one way of how I handle helplessness. However, when I'm angry, when I see unfair situations, I can be angry. I can hammer a man's chest. Then at least the emotion is loud enough and everybody notices it. But what I'm really looking for is the ear that will feel this unfairness together with me, and I will be running around in rage until I find someone who will feel that unfairness together with me, and that gives me a relaxation. And you have also seen the anger and the unfairness and the helplessness, and in a moment when I feel that, I notice, oh, next to all the craziness in the world, there's always the other side. With all the rage that's there in the world, there's the stillness of eternity. With all the cruelty that is there in the world, the love is there too. Healing powers are there too. And then it's up to me that I decide whether I want to go into rage or whether I open the door and walk on into the other side. And I succeed in opening the door and going into the other side by finding another where I can relax, where I can connect. Why are so many people protesting in the streets in Germany? It's really probably mainly to feel yourself in your pain. We've never actually managed to change anybody's opinion by taking to the streets. They probably even become stronger through that, but it helps us heal because we notice that historically we have a wound. In Germany, we have a history that hasn't been healed from our parents, from our grandparents, from our history. And that by itself is a huge feeling of feeling helpless, and taken to the streets, just like you're doing it in Bremen, is something where we get out of our loneliness and we connect to others. And then the next question is, how do you connect to those that you don't want to have anything to do with and who don't want anything to do with you? The ones that you fight against. And that to me is the highest art in politics, to be to connect as humans, even though in terms of opinions we're totally opposites. And Kosha says, what emerges for me are 2 points, and one with helplessness is with the Pocket Project. We're doing trauma relief projects where we're offering support to people in hot crises like Palestine, Ukraine, Africa. And what we're doing there is to not just hold up uh, um, a collaborative humanity, to cultivate that where nobody is left by themselves, to face with our hearts the parts of the world where hot trauma is happening, and not just from our heart but also actively. And the image that I have in my mind is that of onion peels. It's not possible that we all go to the front lines, but what we can do is support those and who are supporting the people on the front lines, to support them and have their back. And that if we do that, there will in turn be someone who has our back and supports us. And in that way, we have waves of support that reach the spaces where the support is needed most. And the second thing in terms of helplessness is, yesterday I spoke to Sami Awad, who is in the West Bank, and who told me, now I no longer believe in a safe state for Palestinians. Just today I lost hope. And I noticed when he said that, exactly that's what I'm feeling too, and it breaks my heart. And he said that from that, a new power arose for him, because I noticed, aha, now it's about the Palestinian identity. Who are we? What what is it about for us? Who are we in the core of our being? And there we're beginning in a group in Bethlehem to explore that. And this inspires me so much because it's an invitation to all of us in this time in the world where we could lose hope to ask, what is our identity as humans? Why is it that we're here on the planet? What is this really about? And to me, that's the global citizenship that I already mentioned before, which is where we really are there for each other. We care about each other. And then something like, Musk, w- a, a, a in a decade or more, money may no longer have any meaning. So maybe what it's what indigenous people have been saying for such a long time. When will you find out that you can't eat money? And it's not what gives happiness to the heart. Gude says thank you. And Hemma thanks Gude for the question. Hemma says, I have two more questions that came in the chat and then also your question, Maria. Okay. I'm part of the Woman Remember course and received the invitation to join here today. And I'm happy about the things I'm hearing here. I'm very grateful. Even if it's a space for women and I think that's a feminine quality, but the men are here and it is about the center. And this makes me very happy to hear that because for a few years, that's what I've been researching femininity, feminine qualities, energies. Many people know what it is, but I didn't. So, with this course and also with today's call, it's part of my search. And maybe we've been led far astray, and now it's about exploring what it is, what that quality is. And I liked Claudine's sentence and very inviting when she said, even though maybe there's now many even now when there's many strong male leaders, it doesn't diminish my power. And that really inspired me to be in my power. So there's a lot of nuggets that I received today that I'm very grateful today. And I want to also mention that a few years ago, a vision came to me. It was in a strong meditation with intense images about what is happening to women in many places with a lot of oppression. But what would happen if those women's anger exploded and destroyed the world and the men? It wouldn't be the solution. The solution is that women are free and men being able to be with free women, and that a balance can emerge. And this is something that's been mentioned a few times today. So you need a balance between the two, and then you can spread your wings. And when the revolution started in Iran, my sister was strongly involved. She has an Iranian friend, and the friend said that the vision that you had reminds me of what is happening at the moment. Women's are rising up, they're fighting for their freedom, but it has to be in balance. And that inspired me to create a film together with friends. And that was a long process to capture these energies, to represent them. Um, and it, the film is is done, but I'm still researching and to look at all the different pieces of the puzzle. Also, the courses in Pioneers and Change, or women like Claudine who go into politics. And that's amazing. And I thank you very much for what you're bringing into the field. Hemma says, thank you, Maria. And I'm very curious about your film. Hema says, Rita, just very briefly is what we can do. Would you be able to keep it essential? Then please come and join us here in the center. Rita says, yeah, just briefly. I have one question that that has been moving a lot for me. So now in Europe, we have so many right-wing parties that have feminine leaders, and that's something that I'm that's moving a lot in me. And what's happening there? And Hema says, thank you for the essence in your question, Rita. And would you like to briefly comment on that? The issue of right-wing parties and feminine leaders in their parties, and what's the link between trauma and neoliberalism in economies? And then the other question was, how do I restore after giving? We have 27 more questions and 3 minutes, so we have endless time, so to speak. Who would like to give a brief resonance to that and a resonance to the questions? And thank you, Rita, for your question as well. Claudine. Claudine says, well, let's make it brief because it's all topics that could fill entire evenings. Also, the topic of trauma and neoliberalism, but also women in politics, even independent of the right-wing issue. When I see women in politics, and if they rise up to high positions, they usually leave a lot of their femininity behind. And in Germany, in hindsight, I saw the feminine qualities of Angela Merkel. Seeing it from today's perspective, I can see how she was able to be with things, to be building bridges at the same time. I know that in the background she had a whole network of women. That's how her whole politics worked. I'm learning from this woman. I used to protest against her, but I'm learning a lot from her these days. And there's a sentence that that was active for me. The hand that moves the cradle is the hand that moves the world. So maybe we're fighting a problem that came into the world through us, because it's the feminine hand that moves the cradle, and it's the women who bring men into life. And what comes back, and what is happening through all these men who are now beginning to also move the cradle. So there's a lot of change that's happening. And I believe that's the last thought. The problem that to externalize the problem and see it with somebody else is never the solution. It's always about looking, what's it to do with me? Also, the current political situation, with all the helplessness it creates in me, what does it have to do with me? And I'm part of it. And that's the most beautiful thing for me at the moment, because if I'm part of it, then I can change it. Hema says, thank you, Claudine. Oh, Claudine says one more sentence. We have an online call called Sprechen und Zuhören that we have once a month on a Wednesday, where we use small breakout groups of 4 people, and we take a current polarizing topic. And people talk about not what they think about it, but what they feel about it. And it's just been stuck in the chat. And as Hemma says, next week it's going to be about the federal elections in Germany. And Kosha, I'm handing back to you, so you can you can say what needs to be said for ending the call. Kosha says, yes, I have this sensation that we are about to end, and I love your last words, Claudine. I don't want to add anything to that. Hemma, thanking you deeply for hosting. Claudine, thanking you deeply for your inspiration, and to invite you all to continue exploring and researching. And Hemma, if you would like to add something, then please do. Hemma says, I invite our open spirits, our open hearts, so that co creation may emerge in the world. Everything's prepared, and we have the power to um, bring something else than the strategy of destroying hope. In patriarchy, power means that others are helpless, but it's not true. We are all powerful in this world. Thank you for being here. Thank you for this beautiful evening with two of you and with 300 other people. Kosha says, thank you all for weaving this space. And now we can move back to the gallery view so we can perceive each other and we can see that it's us together who co create this world. Thank you.